When I see something cool in development, I always want to share it with you guys, because it's nice to be excited for things and it's nice to look forward to things. And every once in a while I come across the odd game where I'm a little unsure, but every once in a while I come across a game that I feel really confident in. And 83 the game is exactly that. Now, if you're not aware, 83 the game is a brand new hardcore shooter from the people who brought us Rising Storm 2. The development studio is Antimatter Games, and they have a rich history of covering lots of very hardcore and military-based tactical shooters, and 83 the game is looking to be no different. Now, slowly and quietly, 83 the game has been ticking on in the background. This game has been just slowly under development and has been regularly posting on its YouTube channel things that it's getting up to and what they're looking to achieve. And their latest batch of news looks really exciting and really encouraging, and that's why I wanted to bring it to you folks here today. So to give you a quick rundown of 83 the game, if you've never encountered it before, 83 is a Cold War gone hot shooter. It's a large scale game, it's not aiming to be, this sort of arcadey shooter, it's not aiming to be a super hardcore milsim realistic experience shooter, it's bridging that nice ground in between, in and around the region of Squad, in and around the region of Hell Let Loose, and if you've played Rising Storm 2 games before, or Rising Storm Vietnam, or any of those above games from Antimatter, this is allegedly an evolution of those titles, not a revolution of those titles. So you can expect a large-scale shooter with authentic factions, a good feeling of authenticity from all of the weapons and all of the regions you'll be fighting in, but it's Cold War gone hot, so it's somewhat theoretical. But with that theoretical conflict, you'll have a traditional NATO faction facing a traditional Russian faction across theoretical conflict grounds, which give us some really exciting gameplay dynamics. These are weapons that of course never really got to see the light of day in the 80s, and you never really saw them in any kind of historical shooter before. So it's really exciting to see some of them out in the open. We're seeing, LAR battle rifles, we're seeing all kinds of weapons employed in the NATO factions and Russian factions. And it means that you're going to see a real emphasis and focus on trying to make the idea of Cold War gone hot be as authentic as possible. What's really great about the most recent batch of news, and why I wanted to show you it, is because it identifies the 4 key pillars of 83, and a lot of them are really interesting, and some of them I feel are going to make the game super unique and something that you absolutely want to play. There are 4 pillars that they are working towards and 4 key concepts that define 83 as a game, and I'm going to go from sort of, the most interesting to sort of the least interesting, I guess, although they all are fairly interesting. And the first one is persistent warfare. 83 the game has a persistent warfare system. Now, they didn't go into detail as to what that looked like, how it's going to function, but as a fundamental design of the game, they want everything that you do, every game you play, every battle you have, every objective you capture, to feel as though it's contributing towards an ongoing conflict. And of course, being 1983, being Cold War gone hot, there can be absolutely any theoretical conflict battleground across Europe or anywhere else in the world, really. So this gives a lot of scope and scale to the game, and I think persistent warfare is something lots of people want to see. I actually can't recall the last time we saw a good persistent warfare system in a military shooter that wasn't something like PlanetSide 2, and it's a really nice system to have. It's something that makes you feel as though you're contributing, and something that can spice up the gameplay dynamic. If one team is on the brink of losing a certain season of war or a certain battle, you can have various different types of game modes being deployed, like an invasion game mode. There's just lots of potential here. You can chop and change different game modes, different scenarios, and allow it to contribute to the persistent warfare system. And I think this is something that's really interesting and something that makes 83 stand out as something I want to follow. The next important thing they talked about was accessible realism, and this is something that's really crucial in these games. Now, Squad and Hell Let Loose themselves have towed the fine line of trying to be a realistic game that's fun to play, and a realistic game that doesn't get cumbersome. What I mean by that is they're effectively saying that they want the game to be realistic until the point where it stops being fun. And this is a really important piece of information. It's something that Squad and Hell Let Loose have really done well in their own ecosystems of games. Hell Let Loose is realistic until it stops being fun. Squad is realistic until it stops being fun. And this is a really important detail for hardcore shooters to get right. And it's one of the reasons people avoid games like Tarkov. Now, I'm saying that Tarkov is not a bad game. I'm saying it's not, something you should absolutely stay away from. But the mechanics within Tarkov absolutely do cut off wide cross sections and wide audiences, because not everybody wants to sit there and splint and bandage their leg every time they get shot by a single round. And more importantly, people don't want to have, really begrudging mechanics such as, limping really, really slowly because you've taken a little bit of damage. Those systems end up being kind of counterintuitive and take you out of the experience and push you into more of a micromanagement experience, which is really damning, really boring, and can get really tedious. Now, I'm not saying that those games shouldn't exist, I'm not saying there isn't a space for them, but for the vast majority of people, especially those who are interested in playing slightly more hardcore shooters, you have to toe a really fine line with this stuff, and I'm glad that the developers have actually taken time to talk about this, because it's something that is really important in any given hardcore shooter. Now, the next one is teamwork first. This is a central pillar of the game, and they are promoting people playing together and that they want people to work and coordinate as a team. But interestingly, they have quite a different design philosophy to other games. Now, they said that in most hardcore shooters, or at least that they found in most hardcore shooters, when you have a group of teammates who work together, it goes really well. But if you have that one teammate who doesn't work particularly well as a team, or doesn't imply to work particularly well as a team, it can actually cost the whole team the experience. Even if your team is working relatively cohesively together, it will take one or two squads, a couple of squads at minimum, to make a difference, to be the teams that can, fundamentally win the match for your faction. Whereas, one or two guys who are using a rocket launcher, who don't know how to use a rocket launcher, and they miss that round, so the tank lives, and then the tank goes and blows up the entire objective and captures everything, is a scenario that plays out more often than you think. Now, they didn't go into a huge amount of detail of what they are implying with teamwork first, but fundamentally they said that they don't want there to be a scenario where individual players can cost a reasonable team the win or loss. And that's something that's good, because especially when you have new players come into this game, you tend to get people who don't know what they're doing, who take kits and specific loadouts that are required for more skillful players, and it means that they just get, ultimately they ruin the situation for pretty much everybody in the server. Now, I've always been a fan of training systems in game. I've always been a fan of locking certain loadouts until people reach certain levels, or however you want to do it. And I think that's a good system to have, because realistically, one of the things I love about Squad is that if you don't know how to use an LAT or a HAT or a rocket launcher or a certain piece of equipment, you can just fire up the training range and figure out how to use it, and that'll make you an effective player on the field. 83 seems to be taking a very similar approach here, although they kind of implied that they might be hard-locking certain elements of the game until people understand them or do training with them, and I absolutely support that decision. The final pillar, of course, is authenticity. Although this is a theoretical conflict, they want the weapons, the feel, the uniforms, the equipment, the tanks, the helicopters, whatever it so happens to be that enters the game, they want it to feel good. And they want it to feel and look like you would expect an 83 warfare experience to feel like. So this is very, very good. Overarchingly, this blog post was super encouraging. There was lots of stuff that they said, like they didn't want random numbers deciding if your weapon jams or fails because it's not fun. Or they didn't want you spending an hour hiking across 3 kilometers of land to get shot by a single pixel, and that'd be the end of that. It seems that they're trying to make a realistic and authentic experience more accessible, more fun, and just more enjoyable. And that's something that shooters like Squad, shooters like Hell Let Loose have done in their own ways and in their own ecosystems. And I'm interested to see what 83's take is on all of that. But overarchingly, this looks like a very encouraging tactical shooter, a very encouraging hardcore shooter, and it's from a development team who are widely experienced. Although I don't really enjoy Rising Storm 2 Vietnam, and it isn't something that I would classify as one of my favorite games, I can definitely see the potential for a game like that to take it to the next level with an evolutionary step like 83. So folks, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. We are so close to 70,000 subscribers. Please hit that sub button, it means a lot to me. And we'll be covering more hardcore shooters, Warzone, Battlefield, everything really. If you're a shooter fan, this is the place to be. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next one.